children, welcome back to the science video session. In this science video session, you are going to learn the lesson Our Environment from Biology of Standard 6. Come, let's move on to the video session.
Unit 4 or Environment. Introduction. The surroundings or space in which a person, animal, or plant lives is known as an environment. Environment is everything that is around us. It can have both living and non living things. Abiotic factors are non living parts such as sunlight, air, water, and minerals in soil. Biotic factors are living things of our environment such as plants, animals, bacteria, and more. Organisms live constantly, interact with one another, and adapt themselves to condition to their environment. Come, let's know more about our environment. The ecosystem. Ecosystem is a community of living and non-living things that work together. Each part of an ecosystem has a role to play. Any changes in the environment, such as increased temperature or heavy rain, can have a big impact on an ecosystem. Ecosystem can be either natural or artificial. Types of ecosystem are classified into natural ecosystem and artificial ecosystem. Natural ecosystem is further classified into terrestrial ecosystem, aquatic ecosystem. Example for terrestrial ecosystem is forest. An example for aquatic ecosystem is pond. Again, the artificial ecosystem classified as terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Terrestrial ecosystem example garden, aquatic ecosystem example aquarium. Next, the components of an ecosystem is classified into biotic components and abiotic components. Biotic components include all the living components, example plants, animals, and human beings. Abiotic components include all the non-living components. The non-living components, that is the abiotic components, are influenced by the factors, physical factors and edaphic factors. The physical factors are light, temperature, wind, humidity. And the edaphic factors, that is the soil factor. What is meant by edaphic factor? It is actually a condition of the soil, whether physical, biological, or chemical, that influences the organism and processes that occur in the soil. So, what are the edaphic factors? Water in soil, air in soil, organic matter in soil. Natural ecosystem. Ecosystem originated without human intervention is called a natural ecosystem. This can be an aquatic ecosystem or a terrestrial ecosystem. The ecosystem in water is called aquatic ecosystem. Sea, river, lake, pond, and puddle are some examples of natural aquatic ecosystem. Ecosystem outside the water body and on land are called terrestrial ecosystems. Forests, mountain regions, deserts, etc. are examples of natural terrestrial ecosystem. Artificial ecosystem. Artificial ecosystems are created and maintained by human. They have some of the characteristics of natural ecosystems. They are much simpler than the natural ecosystems. These can be the terrestrial ecosystems such as paddy fields, gardens, etc., or the aquatic ecosystems such as fish tank. Food chain and food web. Living organisms need food to perform their life processes. Some organisms can produce their own food such as plants, while other organisms cannot do this and need to feed on other organisms to obtain their energy. We can therefore identify different feeding types in an ecosystem based on how the organism gets its food. They are producers, and consumers. Consumers. Organisms which cannot produce their own food need to eat other organisms as food. These organisms are called consumers. All animals are consumers as they cannot produce their own food. Consumers are also called heterotrophs. There are many types of consumer and we can classify them into specific groups depending on the food that they consume. And they are herbivorous, carnivorous, omnivorous, and decomposers. First, herbivorous. Animals which eat plants or plant products are called herbivorous. Example, cattle, deer, goat, and rat. And carnivorous. Animals that eat other animals are called carnivorous. Example, lion, tiger, frog, etc. Next, omnivorous. Animals that eat both plants and animals are called omnivorous. Example, humans, dog, and crow. Decomposers. Microorganisms that obtain energy from chemical breakdown of dead organisms, both plants and animals, is called decomposers. They break complex organic substances into simple organic substances, thus goes into soil and are used by plants. Example, bacterium and fungi. Food chain. In a forest, deer eats grass, and in turn we know tiger eats deers. In any ecosystem, there is a chain-like relationship between the organisms that live there. This sequence of who eats whom in an ecosystem is called as food chain. It describes how organisms get energy and nutrients by eating other organisms. A food chain shows the relationship between producers, example grass, and consumers, example deer, goats, cows, and tiger. Energy flow. The food chain begins with the energy given by the sun. Sunlight triggers photosynthesis in plants. The energy from the sun is stored in the plant parts. When the grasshopper eats the grass, the energy flows from grass to grasshopper. Frog gets energy by eating grasshopper. This energy is transferred to a crow when the frog is eaten by a crow. Thus, we conclude the primary energy production in the world of living things is made by plants, that is, by photosynthesis. The microorganism reduce the excreta and the dead bodies of animals into primary simple components and puts them back into soil. It is this material that helps the plants to grow. Thus, we can see that there is a cycle of materials from primary producer to highest level predators, then back to soil. Trophic levels. We say that the energy is passed along from the producer to the consumer, but there are three different consumers in any food chain. How can we distinguish different consumers? C. Animals that eat plants are primary consumers. Animals that eat primary consumers are called secondary consumers. Animals that eat the secondary consumers, mostly predators, are the tertiary consumers. There may even be large predators that eat tertiary consumers. They are called as quaternary consumer. Each of these levels in the food chain is called a trophic level, and the trophic level is shown in the picture. Organisms uses up to 90% of its food energy for its life process. Only about 10% of energy goes into new body cells and will be available to the next animal when it gets eaten. This loss of energy at each trophic level can be shown by an energy pyramid. See, a rat eats grain, and in turn we know snake eats rat. Now snake is a prey for peacock, and in turn peacocks are easy prey for tigers and leopards. Now think, do tigers have any natural predators? No. So in all food chain there is a top level predator that has no natural predators. In an aquatic ecosystem there are no natural predator for alligator, and in a forest there are no natural predators for tiger. Importance of food chain. Learning food chain helps us to understand the feeding relationship and interaction between organisms in any ecosystem. Understanding the food chain also helps us to appreciate the energy flow and nutrition circulation in an ecosystem. This is important because pollution impacts the ecosystem. The food chain can be used to understand the movement of toxic substances and their impacts. Food web. Consumers have different sources of food in an ecosystem and do not rely on only one species for their food. If we put all the food chains within an ecosystem together, then we end up with many interconnected food chains. This is called a food web. A food web is very useful to show the many different feeding relationships between different species within an ecosystem. Waste management and recycling. To protect our environment, it is very important to reduce waste, manage it properly, and maximize recycling. Waste is any substance or material that has been used but is not wanted anymore. This is either because it is worn out, broken, or no longer has any purpose. Everyone produces waste, and our waste has an impact on all ecosystem. However, most of us do not know where our garbage goes. There are many types of waste. There is a liquid waste in our drains. There are gases hiding in the air like pollutants from factories. And there is a solid waste we put in our waste bin. Biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste. Solid waste we generate can be classified into two major types: biodegradable waste and non-biodegradable waste. Biodegradable waste. The term biodegradable is used for those things that can be easily decomposed by natural agents like water, oxygen, ultraviolet rays of the sun, microorganisms, etc. One can notice that when a dead leaf or a banana peel is thrown outside, it is acted upon by several microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, or small insects in a time period. Biodegradable waste includes vegetable and fruit peels, leftover food, and garden waste like grass, leaves, weeds, and twigs. Natural elements like oxygen, water, moisture, and heat facilitate the decomposition, thereby breaking the complex organic forms to simpler units. Decomposed matter eventually mixes or returns back to the soil, and thus the soil is once again nourished with various nutrients and minerals. Non biodegradable waste. Those materials which cannot be broken down or decomposed into the soil by microorganisms and natural agents are labeled as non biodegradable. These substances consist of plastic materials, metal scraps, aluminum cans, and bottles, etc. These things are practically immune to the natural process and thus cannot be fed upon or broken down even after thousands of years. Solid waste management. It is our duty to reduce creating waste and protect environment. Three R's are important in protecting environment. The first R is reduce, and the second R is reuse, and the last R is recycle. The waste hierarchy or pyramid shows the best way to manage solid waste. The first one, avoid. Avoid the usage of unwanted materials which create more debris. Before you buy anything, think that do I really need it? Example, avoid buying packaged foods, refuse to buy, use and throw plastic products. Then, reduce. We can reduce the waste by using durable goods that last longer instead of things that are used once and thrown away. Example, write on both sides of paper. instead of unnecessary printing. Use electronic facilities. Share newspapers, magazines, and other things with others. What is next in the waste hierarchy? Yes, it's reuse. Reusing means using a thing again and again rather than using and throwing after a single use. Example, instead of using plastic bags, use and throw pens and batteries. Use cloth bags, fountain pens, and rechargeable batteries. Reuse glass bottles for other purposes. Repair footwears and use them. Next, recycle. The process by which waste materials are used to make new products is called recycling. Example, using old clothes to make paper and melting some plastics to make floor mats, plastic boats, and hose pipes. Next, compost. The process of degradation of organic waste into manure by the action of microorganisms is called composting. The manure thus obtained becomes natural fertilizer for the plants as well as increases the soil fertility. Next, incinerate. The burning of solid waste in incinerator is called incineration. Human anatomical waste, that is discarded medicines, toxic drugs, blood, pus, are disposed by means of incineration. During incineration, the enormous heat kills all contagious disease causing germs. We can also produce electricity with the help of this heat. Next, landfill. Landfilling is a method in which wastes are dumped into naturally occurring or man made pits and covered with soil. Garbage buried inside landfills remain here for a long time as they decompose very slowly and become manure. These places can be converted into parks, gardens, etc. Finally, there are two steps you should remember. What are they? The first step should always be to reduce waste. Think of the 3 R's and the waste pyramid and remember the order of the levels. Next, the second step is to keep waste separate. This way, the waste will remain clean and can be easily reused or recycled. Mixing different types of waste together makes waste dirty. Dirty waste gets sent to a landfill or open dump. Waste separation exercise. The Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 say that every household should segregate and store the waste generated by them in three separate streams, namely biodegradable, non-biodegradable, and domestic hazardous waste in suitable bins, and hand over segregated waste to authorized waste pickers or waste collectors as per the direction or notification by the local authorities from time to time. Nobody shall throw, burn, or bury the solid waste on street, open public spaces, outside his premises, or in the drain or water bodies. Domestic hazardous waste means discarded paint drums, pesticide cans, CFL bulbs, tube lights, expired medicines, broken mercury thermometer, used batteries, used needles and syringes, and contaminated gauge, etc., generated at the household level. See, children, we should learn how to separate waste correctly into three waste bins so we can keep Tamil Nadu clean and beautiful. Pollution. Pollution occurs when the environment gets contaminated by waste, chemicals, and harmful substances. Pollution is the damage caused to the environment mainly because of human activities. Any substance that causes pollution is known as pollutant. Pollution is an unwanted change in the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of our land, air, and water. So, what are the types of pollution? There are four major kinds of pollution: air pollution, water pollution, land or soil pollution, and noise pollution. Air pollution. Most air pollution is caused by the burning of fossil fuels, example oil, petrol, coal, and natural gas. These fossil fuels are used in factories, power plants, and motor vehicles. Burning these fossil fuels release toxic gases and fine particles such as ash and soot into the air, causing air pollution. Air pollution is also caused by burning solid waste, especially some plastic, gases, or chemicals released from factories, and fumes from aerosols like deodorant spray cans or paints. Certain toxic gases produced by industries mixed with raindrops high in the atmosphere and make rain unusually acidic. This is called acid rain. It damages plants, washes the nutrients out of soils, and kills fish. Air pollution is harmful to all living organisms, including human. Polluted air affects skin, eyes, and respiratory system. Then how can we reduce air pollution? Cycle or walk short distance instead of using a motor vehicle. Travel by public transport. Do not burn solid waste and avoid fireworks. Water pollution. Water pollution occurs when waste from factories, houses, and farms mixes with the water in river, lakes, ponds, the ocean, or even underground. Contaminated or polluted water can spread diseases and chemicals which are not good for our health. The most significant sources of water pollutants are sewage, that is, water we use at home for bathing, cleaning, and cooking. Then, industrial effluents, liquid waste from factories. Next, agricultural pollutants, chemical pesticides and fertilizers that get washed from farms. Then, solid waste, when waste gets dumped into water bodies. Next, how can we reduce water pollution? Do not pour leftover oil, old medicines, or waste down the drain or into the toilet. Reduce the use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers to grow crops. Use wastewater for garden in home. Do not litter or dump waste. Always use a waste bin. Land or soil pollution. In the same way as water and air get polluted, land or soil pollution happens when toxic chemical changes the natural balance in soil. Land pollution comes from farming, the excess use of chemical pesticides and fertilizers, mining, digging up metals and other materials, factories, industrial waste, and the solid waste from our own homes like plastics and broken electronics. Soil pollution affects animals, humans, and even plants because soil or land acts like a sponge. When it rains, pollutant sinks into the soil. If we grow plants to eat in polluted soils, these dangerous chemicals can get into our food. How can we reduce land pollution? First, try to reduce waste, then recycle the rest. Always use a waste bin and never litter. Do not burn waste, the ash mixes easily with soil. Noise pollution. Noise pollution affects the environment. We all like a quiet and peaceful place since unpleasant or loud sounds disturb us. Loud music, the sound of motor vehicles, fireworks, and machines cause noise pollution. Continuous noise disturbs our sleep and does not let us to study. Noise pollution has been directly linked to stress and health impacts such as high blood pressure and hearing loss. Loud noise or even loud music can damage our ears. Noise pollution also disturbs animals. Birds have to communicate louder so that they can't hear each other in noisy areas. Even underwater noise pollution from ships can make whales lose their way as they use sounds to navigate. So, how do we reduce noise pollution? Turn off your electronics when you do not use them. Lower the volume when you watch TV or listen to music. Remind drivers not to use the horn too much. Avoid fireworks. Speak, do not shout.